Welcome to episode 58 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary, with Kristen
and Catherine, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for a virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Catherine.
So we're starting a new book today. It's a new month.
Yay! I love new book day.
It's funny because I just listened to our last episode, like after the edit, and I was like, you were like, I'm so sad when books end. But I'm so happy when we start new ones too.
I know.
And it just shows it.
Yeah.
You don't
I
lie.
love new book day. No, we do not. I feel like this week this month is going to be a challenge for me.
Yeah.
Because we've spoken before about how I feel about this book. And we're doing it, and I'm going to give it a fair chance, but as a series, this was a did not finish for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we honestly stopped in the same part of the same book, basically. Like, I still have a bookmark in mine downstairs. I'm like, eventually I'll get back to this. But I was the same way. I read this book and I liked it. Like, there's a lot of things I like about it. But then I feel like there was just too much happening that, like, I would have needed to do a reread to read the next books in the series. And, like, I used to do that when I was younger. Like, if a book came out, like Harry Potter, I'd reread them all just to, like, right before the next book came out, super pumped, ready for it. But, like, now that I'm older, I don't want to reread books just to understand the series. Like, I mean, obviously I reread books that I love, but that's different. Like, you know, just a book in a series that is not necessarily my favorite, I'm not gonna kill myself to reread it. And the series isn't done. Maybe when the series is done, I'll read them all again. Yeah. But I even said after we finish this one, maybe I'll start reading the second one again and then the third. Because I stopped because I was like, I have no idea what's happening.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
But anyways, we're doing it anyway because a lot of people seem to really like this book. And a lot of people, because actually so many people say, oh, well, if you love SJM, you'll love this book.
Yeah.
And, like, I see that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't at the same time.
Yeah. It's just, I think it's just the genre of the book. Like, it is a plot-forward romance book with fantasy. Like, it's not just romance for the sake of romance, which I love. Don't get me wrong. Love a good book like that. But it really is like there is a world and there's plot and, like, it's not just...
There's adventure and action and, like...
Not just sexy times.
Although, save the world sort of scenario.
Yeah. I can't remember... Like, there's scenes that I remember... Sex scenes, obviously. That I remember from this book. But I don't know if they're in this book or the next one. And I hope they're in this one.
Maybe at the end of this book, I think.
I think it's at the end of this book. There's one scene that, like, I think it's the reason I made you read this book. It was that one scene.
In fairness, she writes a good sex scene.
Yes. Oh, exactly.
She is great at the sex scene. I think, we've spoken before about how we feel.
Yeah.
So, in saying that, we're doing From Blood and Ash by Jennifer. You say Armentrout, I say Armentrout, just because but we don't know. So,
I just saw the word trout, and I said trout.
See, I see that as like a French word, so I'm like, ooh, Armentrout.
Yeah.
But, whatever.
Yeah.
We don't actually know how it's pronounced.
I don't at all. Maybe I should have looked that up. I didn't even realize we said it differently. All good. Maybe before next week's episode, I'll look it up and figure out how it's actually said. But yeah, this is one of those books that I did find it because it was suggested for people that love Sarah J. Maas. So I did read it, and then I forced Kristen to read it because of one sex scene. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? So
Yeah. So it was suggested to you like on online?
I think I just found it on like Instagram or something. Like I was looking through and saw like recommendations. There's a bunch of books that like I read because like either a podcast I listened to about books had talked about it, or like somebody posted about it online. And like this is one of those that I was like, I was in a phase for a hot second where I just bought every book that I heard about because I was just looking for a good one. But like this one, and then that reverse harem one that I forget the name of. Anyway, Den of Vipers, that one.
Right.
And I think I read those right in a row. But yeah, just suggestions that people made on Instagram. And I was like, I need a new book. Let's do it.
Yeah.
I am highly suggestible.
And I'll be fair, I actually remember, I think this book sat on my shelf for quite a while. And I actually don't know if you lent me your copy or if you gave me a new one. I don't know.
I just gave you my copy, but I've bought a new one, so it doesn't matter.
Okay. So, because I still have it.
Yeah.
Because that's what I'm using this month to read it.
I just bought a new one.
Great. Anyway, so I remember you suggesting it to me, and I remember having it for a while, sort of similar to the Shadow and Bone thing, where it like just sat on my shelf for ages. And I finally did read it, and I remember not realizing it was a series. And I actually think I remember the first book. I remember eye rolling a few times, and I will talk about those. Mm-hmm. But in general, I actually, once I got into it, I really liked it.
Yeah.
And I thought the story was good and interesting. And then I remember immediately going for book 2. Mm-hmm. And I think I read through that. And then I remember going for book 3. And I couldn't find it. And I remember texting you and getting very upset with you that you got me to read a series that wasn't finished.
It's fair.
Not like very upset. Like,
no,
sorry,
I know.
Like, you know, I was just like, how could you do this to me?
Yeah.
And I had to wait and wait and wait for the third book to come out. And then it finally came out, and I was really excited for it. And then I started reading it. And yeah, it was very complicated and a little convoluted. And I just wasn't as into it as I was into books 1 and 2.
Yes.
And I feel like that sort of has caused me
to be jaded
to
about
now.
This one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because, like, I obviously liked it the first time I read it, or else I wouldn't have gone into book 2 and been so upset that book 3 wasn't out yet.
Yeah.
So I had to have liked it and been into it. But now I'm finding in my reread, I'm eye-rolling a lot more. Like, everything is sort of like, ugh, of course. So, you know, I do feel like maybe the fact that I didn't get into book 3 as much is like sort of, it's like causing me to rethink if I liked the first 2.
Yeah, I get that. I do think that I've only really read what we're doing this week so far. But I do think that I do like this book. Like, I like our main character. She's a strong person. Mm-hmm. Obviously there's some things about her that I roll or find annoying, but like that's every character, I think. But I do like her as a character. And mysterious Hawke guy. Mm-hmm. He seems hot. Can't complain.
Yes. No. I mean, I wouldn't kick him out of bed for eating crackers.
Exactly. Yeah. So far I'm enjoying it, but yeah, I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So just a heads up, guys, we are not a spoiler-free zone, even though it might be semi-spoiler-free because I can't really remember anything. And things might get saucy. So, as we said, we're doing From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L Armentrout. She is a #1 New York Times and #1 international and USA Today best-selling young adult paranormal, science fiction, fantasy, and contemporary romance author.
Yikes.
So she writes a lot of different genres. And she also has a lot of books. Like, she's published 91 books and
Yikes.
like a lot, yeah. And she has 12 series, some of which obviously she's still working on. And she has 5 standalone YA books and 5 standalone adult books and 3 anthologies. So, and she also has a pseudonym apparently, J. Lynn. So like, she's writing a lot of stuff.
So like, is the 91 books just under the Jennifer L Armentrout, and the J. Lynn, she's got a complete like other ones?
I didn't do enough research. If I'm being honest with you.
And like, I'm wondering like how long it has taken for those 91 books to come out, because that is a feat. 91 books. That's so many.
And she's putting these books out pretty fast. Like, I think From Blood and Ash came out, and the second one might have come out in the same year. Like, she's putting out multiple books a year, which, like, obviously we're SJM fans, but like, it takes SJM years to get her books out, which she's also on maternity leave now, so like, I get it. But like, still, even when she's not, it's usually like 1 book a year or something.
But at the same time, we got to think about, like, you know, SJM is releasing like 500 to 600 pages of quality writing.
Yeah. No,
right?
That's what I'm saying. Like, obviously, like, so like, they're similar genres, but clearly, like, Sarah J. Maas is more of an Easter egger, and she's more of like, she's one of those authors that has a murder board, and like, she's gonna call back something that happened 15 books ago in a different series in a book she's doing now. So like, it is different. And obviously there's all kinds of authors. We love them all.
Yeah, we do. And like, and there are times too when you enjoy the quick, like, you want the quick turnaround. Like, yes, just give me more to read, please.
Exactly.
However, so we are talking about From Blood and Ash, and it is a book about Poppy, or Penelope, who was chosen since birth to be the Maiden. Her ascension is coming up, but she doesn't really know what to expect about it. And she meets this handsome new guard named Hawke, and she starts to rethink her destiny and what she's sort of been taught her whole life. There are currently 4 books out in the series, with book 5 coming out in July. According to Goodreads anyway, there's a possible 7 books in this series, which is just an interesting number. 7
Seems
books.
like a lot.
It does seem like a lot. Like, it feels like then we've really only scratched the surface on what this.
Yeah. So that's kind of, I don't know. I have this issue with series, like, when the couple gets together, I don't care anymore. Yeah. I'm like, they're together. That's my happily ever after. I'm done. Like, you know what I mean?
But are we going to have a sort of like, is it going to be like a Feyre Tamlin situation?
It could be. But it could be.
But like, if it's just for you to get your main couple together so quickly, and it like, makes me think that maybe they'll have a rocky road or something down the line. Like,
yeah, and it's not super quickly anyway, because like, there's no, this book doesn't end with like a happily ever after.
No,
I guess that's a spoiler, but like, the couple isn't like, we're together forever and so happy at the end of this book, and at the end of the second book,
they are,
yeah, but it like takes them the whole book. Mm-hmm. So, but I'm just like, what else is there to talk about?
Yeah.
But obviously there's something, or there wouldn't be books.
It's true. So book 5 of a possible 7 books total is coming out in July. And there is a related series as well. I think it's sort of like functions as a prequel a little bit. Yeah. Like a really, 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 really big prequel. Like thousands of years in previously past, prequel.
I've actually heard really good things about it.
Oh, well, that's exciting.
That people like it better than the main series.
Oh.
But, I haven't tried it yet.
No. Anyway, so book 3 of that series, called Flesh and Fire, is due out this December.
Yeah.
So yeah. So this week we are reading chapters 1 to 9. So we open with our main character. We know it's Poppy, but we don't at the beginning. Is sitting at a table playing cards with a bunch of guards. The character explains that they're sort of like, I'm going to call it an empath. She doesn't really name it.
Yeah.
Like, give it a name. She just calls it her talent, her ability, but I'm calling it sort of an empath. And like, she can feel someone else's pain.
Yeah.
And she said sometimes it can feel like overwhelming. And of course it can, if like she's in a big room of crowded people and everybody is upset about something.
Yeah. Like, it's already overwhelming if you like have tendencies of empathy in general, like, and you're talking to people. If you can actually feel their pain all the time, oh god.
Yeah. So apparently they're not allowed to talk about it. Like, they're not allowed to use their power, but they say that they don't always do what they're told. So, like, do you think that the people that take care of her, do they know about this power?
Yes.
Or do you think it's just her, like, I forget. The person that helps her.
No, they know about it, and that's why she's not allowed to use it, because they say that she's not. But, like, I think that the ability is, like, the reason they know that she's the Maiden.
Oh.
But I don't remember. That could be wrong.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think that was, like, the sign of someone being a Maiden is that they have this power.
Oh, okay.
But I don't.
Yeah. Anyway, also in advance, obviously, this is a fantasy world, and it's the first few chapters, so we're gonna get a lot of world building, right? Just FYI. So the guards that she was playing, or that our main character is playing cards with, the guards are all from what's called the Rise, which is a wall that's made out of limestone and iron. And apparently every city in the Kingdom of Solace, so the name of the country is Solace, has a Rise. And I guess their city they live in is called Macedonia.
I think so.
So every city has one of these big walls around it, but depending on the size of the city, depends on the size of the Rise.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
So, like, if it's a smaller city or town, then you get a little Rise. If it's a bigger, then you get a bigger one, obviously. So each city or village is protected by this wall. Mm-hmm. So apparently she says that, like, the guards are all off duty, so they're being, like, fun and all that, but everyone is still sort of on guard all the time, watching out for the deadly mist.
What?
That we know nothing about as of yet.
Yes. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, do I know what this is? And then it's like, no, you don't know. I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah. I find, too, that, like, the way that this beginning, these first few chapters go is, like, in this part, she talks about the mist and says, oh, they're always watchful of the mist, but she doesn't then explain the mist.
Yeah.
She waits and explains it later.
Yeah.
She also mentions that she's always armed. She has her favorite dagger, like, strapped to her thigh. She mentions, too, she's not really supposed to have a dagger, but she got it anyway.
Yeah.
She hears the men talking about an attack, and somebody was drained of blood. And she's sort of, like, trying to listen in, but, like, the guys are sort of like, oh, maybe we should talk about this, like, when this woman is not around. And she's like, oh, you can talk about it, I don't care. And they're like, no, we'll wait.
This delicate flower of a woman.
Yeah.
And they don't know who she is, but they're just like, it's not a sensible conversation to have in front of a lady.
Yes. So I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think if not all of the women in this club. So they're at a like a bar club sort of thing. I think all the women wear masks.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
I think the men can as well, but don't.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she talks about how she's at this this club called the Red Pearl, and it's sort of like one of those like underground, like you go there to like indulge in all of your like all the sins. So
yeah.
like you can drink, you can smoke, you can like gamble. There's prostitutes. Like it's just like Sodom and Gomorrah for this book, I guess.
Yeah.
But apparently she's not allowed to be there. So she has to keep her mask on and keep her identity hidden. She also says that the Duke of Macedonia, so there's no king of Macedonia because that's just a town, but the Duke of Macedonia, whose name is Dorian Tierman. So Dorian, we got a little similar names.
Not to the last book.
Yes. Apparently he would love to punish her for being out. And apparently his trusty confidant, Lord Brandel Mazine, would love to help. So this is a call, I think, a little bit to what's going to go on in your, like, a little bit ahead. So we just have to keep those two dudes in mind. Mm-hmm. And then we get info that she is the chosen. So she's called the Maiden or the Chosen. She has to wear a veil all the time that covers her face and hair except for her mouth. So like almost everybody would not recognize her. Mm-hmm. Even if she took her mask off, no one would really know who she is because nobody is allowed to see her face.
Yeah.
The Duke and Duchess of Macedonia are her official, like her legal guardians, we'll say.
Yeah.
Even though she's 18, so like, does she even have legal guardians at this point?
I guess it's a different world.
Yeah. Anyway, so because the guards sort of stopped, like, talking about these scandalous, like, these sort of private things that they didn't want her to hear about, she's like, okay, well, I'm just gonna go. So she gets up to sort of, like, wander around. It's her first time, in the club. And she just sort of puts off this really, like, naive air. Like, I find this a really interesting aspect to her character because as we see down the road, she isn't this quiet, demure, sort of soft-spoken character that you would sort of expect from, like, a chosen maiden who's always wearing a veil. Like,
yeah,
you sort of expect someone really, like, sort of an Elaine style character.
Yeah.
And she's anything but that.
Mm-hmm.
However, I still find, like, this aspect of her character, like, she's super naive going through the club. Like, she sees women sitting on men's laps and, like, she's scandalized and, like...
Yeah. She really has a very different, contrasting personality, I guess. Because, like, she is very sheltered from, especially sex. Like, which I guess makes sense. She's the maiden.
Yeah.
Like, means virgin, basically. I don't think that's what they're saying in this book, but, like, she does have to be a virgin. But I don't think, like, I don't think they've named her the maiden solely for that purpose.
No.
Like, but yeah.
Apparently she's also only allowed to wear white. She's also rarely allowed to leave her room. So, like, if she's barely allowed to leave her room, she's definitely not allowed to leave the castle and go to a sexy nightclub, like, during the night.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, okay. So second daughters, like, I guess, I don't know what makes her think of this at this time, but she talks about how second daughters and sons are given to the court at their 13th birthday. So there's, like, a rule in place that all second-born children are given to the court at their 13th birthday, and then third-born children, apparently, are given to the gods at their 1 month birth, like when they're a month or something like that.
Yeah.
It's never really, like, full on stated that this is a rule. We just get this a little bit later.
Yeah.
Like, we sort of get a situation where it's half explained, but also half not explained.
Yeah.
We're finally introduced to her name now, which is Penelope or Penelope. I don't really know. You said in the audiobook it was Penelope with an F.
Yeah.
I always just said Penelope because it's
spelled
because Poppy is the nickname for Penelope, but her name is spelled weird. It's Penallaphe. So I guess it is Fee because the PH. But anyway, so apparently she's the queen's favorite. I don't know why that is important there, but apparently it is. She also says that when she turns 19, she will ascend. But we don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. But yeah, we have no idea what that means. And then she says that if she was caught at the Red Pearl, then the Duke, her guardian, would punish her. And apparently he's real sadistic.
Yeah.
So, like, love that for her.
Yeah, good times. Living a good life, obviously.
Yeah, obviously she's not having a good time.
Thriving.
And here we get that her nickname is Poppy, but really only her brother uses it. Her brother's name is Ian. So her ascension, she describes, is like she's being given to the gods. And again, we don't really know what that means. And to be honest, neither does she. She has no idea what this ascension entails. Nobody will tell her. It's very secret. Mm-hmm. And like once you ascend, you're also not allowed to tell anybody. Mm-hmm. She's really nervous about it, obviously. And she sort of despairs over it because she's like, no matter what I do, I have no choice in this. Like, it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. But she sort of tries to take comfort in that her brother is a couple years older than her. He ascended 2 years ago and seems fine.
Yeah.
Like, she says she hasn't seen him because he had to move away. But he still writes her letters and, like, it sounds just like him.
Yeah.
She also said it was weird, like, he was ordered to marry this lady named Claudia. Again, weird spelling name. Claudeya. Like, why? Why is that a requirement? Why can't you just spell it the normal way?
Fantasy.
I digress. But apparently he never speaks about Lady Claudia in any of his letters. So she's, like, wondering if he's happy in his marriage or, like, if it's just one of those things where they rarely, like, connect.
Yeah.
She also mentions that the Ascended live for a very long time. So, like, they're not immortal. They will eventually die, but it takes a really, really, really long time, like thousands of years. She also then, so, like, this is a lot, like, a running dialogue in her head. She's, like, seeing a couple head up the stairs for, like, sexy times. And she reveals that she, as the maiden, has to remain pure, which we sort of said earlier. No touching or anything. Like, she's not allowed to kiss. Like, no one's allowed to touch her. Like, people aren't even allowed to see her face. So, like, and this is something that really bothers her because she doesn't like that she doesn't get a choice. She doesn't get to choose. Yeah. Which is a problem.
It's a big theme for her.
Yeah.
And I mean, lack of choice. Obviously, it would be.
Valid, right?
Yeah.
It sucks when you don't get to choose. So she's just, like, roaming around the room, and she gets this tingling sensation, sort of like she's being watched, but then it's never spoken about again. So that's fun. She, like, finds a room, and she doesn't go in, but there's, like, velvet curtains, like, all around the room. So she wants to go in because there's, like, a really, like, sensual music playing in there. Like, it's really funny, though, because when I think of it, I hear, like, this, so she says there's, like, a deep bass, like, I'm thinking, like, this is like a rave club scene, like, boom, boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom. Like, they're playing some, like, David Guetta or, like,
Yeah.
something really, like, party. And, like, people are dancing very, like, sensually together. And I'm like, is this Dirty Dancing? Like,
Yeah.
like, that's what I picture. Like, I just picture, like, a club where,
Yeah.
like, the girls are, like, booty popping and the guys are trying their best to, like, I don't even know what.
Touch a girl's butt with their
Yeah.
grind.
With their pee.
Yeah, to grind on them.
So that's totally what I picture in my head. I know that's probably not accurate, but, you know, who cares?
Yeah.
Anyway, so she is, like, about to go in because she's like, ooh, what's in there? But then this worker lady comes up behind her. I'm assuming it's a worker.
Yeah, I think so.
Comes up behind her and says, like, you don't want to go in there. Like, that's too scandalous for a first timer. So I'm thinking, like, oh my God, people are, like, definitely just having sex on the dance floor.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if it's scandalous, like, what's going on in there? I want to know.
Like, there's definitely some naked bodies in there, for sure.
And I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
This
is what we came for.
Yeah. So Poppy is sort of like, oh shit, like, because the missus is like, oh, it's too scandalous for someone like you. And Poppy is like, oh my God, shit, does she recognize me? And the woman is like, it's fine, like, your mask is fine, but I can tell that you're here. It's your first time here. But then she also says, I know you're the Maiden.
Right? It's like, what?
And the woman is like, shit, like, oh my God, she's gonna tell on me.
Yeah, of course.
And the woman is like, don't worry, like, I won't tell anybody. And Poppy's sort of like, why? Like, why would you keep that? Why would you keep that secret? And the woman is sort of like, well, why would I tell anyone? And she said, because you would earn the favor of the Duke and the Duchess. If you told them, like, if you told them I was out, they would, like, reward you.
Yeah.
And the woman says that she doesn't need the favor of an ascended.
Yee.
So
that sounds like what's, I don't know the words. Against the rules to say.
Yeah, considering they're the rulers, and I feel like in this kingdom, Solace, I feel like all of the rulers are ascended. Like, that's the elite, the wealthy population. So, like, yeah, obviously this woman doesn't like them, which is sort of taboo.
Yeah, that's a good word.
And then Poppy is, like, sort of scandalized, like, what? Thinking in her head, she doesn't like them. Maybe that means she's a dissenter. And a dissenter is someone that does not support King Jalara and Queen Ileana. But instead, they support the Dark One, Prince Castile of Atlantia.
It's funny when you're reading books and they're like, the Dark One. You're like, oh, he's the bad guy.
Yeah.
Like, you'd think they'd give him a different name. Like, Dissenters and the Dark One. They're the bad guys, obviously.
Yeah. But, like, I think of the Dark One, I think of Ben Barnes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, if they did this.
Just get Ben Barnes to be the Dark One again.
I don't know. He'd have to get jacked, though.
He would have to get jacked, yeah.
Like, very jacked.
Yeah.
I'd be fine with it, but he would have to get jacked to play Hawke.
Yeah.
I don't know if he could. But I would watch it.
Yeah, me too. Anyway, apparently, if you were discovered as a dissenter, you're killed immediately.
Whoa.
Like, you don't get a trial, you don't get a second chance. You're just like, oh, you're a dissenter? Kill.
Death.
Stab, stab.
It will kill.
So that's fun and completely reminiscent of a fair and just society.
Yes. True.
She's also thinking about how there have been towns and villages attacked lately, and the Atlanteans are totally responsible. And I'm sorry, when I think of Atlanteans, I literally cannot stop thinking about, like, oh, you're from Atlantis.
Yeah.
You're like an underwater, you could swim. Like,
you could swim. I know. Yeah.
Like, I can't not think that way, and it's not like that. No. But I can't stop making that connection in my brain, and it is weird.
Yeah. No, I completely get that. And like I the first time I read it, I was like, oh, definitely means
yes!
Definitely Atlantis related. And I guess like there are some similarities-ish, but anyway.
Yeah.
We'll get there when we get there.
We will get there.
We even will get there. Do we get there this book or is it next book?
We do not get there this book, I don't think.
We might not get there. Because we already have it related to something in our heads. And, like, I know there's definitely some things that she's, like, relating it to. Like, obviously, later on, when we get more about the Atlanteans, like, they're in hiding. Like, that's similar, I guess. But, like, it is the same. It almost would make more sense to a brain if it was just a different name. But
yeah. And I feel like that's part of my sort of, I'm not going to say my issue because it's not that strong of a problem, but like it's sort of I feel like I'm making all of these connections to things I already know, but they actually are not relevant at all.
Yeah.
So anyway, so apparently there have been towns and villages attacked, and everyone is saying the Atlanteans are responsible for it. Apparently they're also responsible for the mist.
Just interesting, because I didn't realize the Atlanteans came up this early in the book. I just read it. I realized that. But I kind of skim over some of this stuff because there's so much information dump. And, like, it's just weird because we don't really understand the differences between Atlanteans and Descendants and, like, what each of them are. There's just so much thrown at you.
A lot of info dumping.
Yeah. So, yeah.
The mist apparently also killed Poppy's parents, so she is very against them, the Atlanteans. And she says she couldn't understand how anyone supported this fallen kingdom and that they're awful.
Yeah.
The woman sort of says, like, she's like thinking all of this, like, oh my god, what if this woman's a dissenter? Oh my god, what? And anyway, then the woman's like, trust me, you have nothing to fear from me. But then she points out a man across the room and says, but you might have to worry about him. And she looks over and she's like, shit. Because it's Victor Wardwell. So we're getting a ton of names, like, right off the bat, right? Yeah. Like, we've already been introduced to, like, 7 people. So he's, like, this high-ranking guard he's the one who's taught Poppy to fight. She says he's like a father to her, and he's her personal guard. She says she has 2 personal guards, so Victor is one of them. The other one his name is Rylan, but they're not as close, obviously.
Yeah.
And she says that she can't get caught by Victor because he would lecture her.
Oh no.
Like, she actually says, like, she said in the book, like, she isn't worried that he would, like, rat her out to the Duke and Duchess. He wouldn't.
Yeah.
But she's like, you know, if he found me, he would be disappointed in me and he would give me a lecture and that would be so bad.
Yeah, I guess it's mostly the, like, disappointment, though, because, like, he's, like, her father figure, and, like, she'd feel bad.
I guess. It's just one of those eye roll moments of, like, really? Anyway.
Sounds like you get the shit kicked out of you.
Yes!
And you're upset about the possibility of a lecture.
Yeah.
You know? It's like priorities.
Yeah. Anyway, the woman sort of offers her a place to hide upstairs, and she's sort of like, why are you helping me? And the woman responds with, because everybody deserves to live, if only for a few hours. Which, like, is sort of... I appreciate this lady.
Me too.
Because, like, good on... Like, the fact that she recognized her and the fact that she's helping her, because she, like... I feel like a lot of people probably assume that her life as the Maiden is, like, amazing. She's chosen.
Yeah.
Right? That's awesome. And for someone to realize, no, your life probably sucks.
Yeah. She's
like,
chosen by the gods. Clearly she's like, loves every minute of it and is like pampered and blah, blah, blah. But yeah.
Anyway, so she heads upstairs. The woman says, like, head on up the stairs, 6 doors down. Anyway, so she goes in the room and, like, she opens the door. And all of a sudden, she starts hearing noise up, like, behind, like, coming from the hallway. So she's like, shit, I gotta get in the room. So she's, like, backing into the room in the dark. And then all of a sudden, some dude, like, wraps his arms around her from behind and says, well, this is unexpected. And she's like, oh.
Oops.
Yeah. She turns around to face him. And she recognizes him. It's Hawke Flynn, which we've already said his name a couple of times.
Yeah. Also, I love his name. It reminds me of Tangled.
Yeah, it also reminds me of Tangled. There's another funny thing. So she says that his height is striking. And that he's nearly a foot taller than her. That's not that much taller. A foot? It's like a head.
Yeah. Do we ever get how tall she is?
No, I don't think. Well, not in this bit, unless she's like an extraordinarily tall woman.
I assume she's probably like 5'3" or something.
But then if he's...
So he's only 6'3".
Yeah, to me that's not that striking of a... Like, to me that's not that... That's not like something where you... Like, if he was like 6.5 feet tall or like bordering 7 feet... Then I'd be like, whoa, you're tall.
Yeah, maybe she's like 5'8", and then like if he's 6'8", that is like, whoa.
I guess.
But yeah.
Anyway. But like also, she doesn't say he is a foot. He's nearly a foot.
Oh.
So I would put that at maybe 10 inches.
Yeah.
Or how many inches is in a foot? 12?
12, yeah.
Yeah, so like 10 inches taller. To me, that's like, you know.
Is he even 6 foot?
Is right? Maybe not. Anyway, so she says that he'd come with the Rise Guard a few months ago, and he's been training in the castle. And she says that, like, he's super hot. Like, all the ladies sort of check him out when he's training, like, in the courtyard, and, like, all sweaty and muscly, and his muscles are rippling. And
muscles are rippling.
Hey, man, that is a very common description. Muscles are always rippling in these books. So she has not been alone. Like, the other ladies are checking him out, but so is she.
Yeah.
She thinks he's beautiful. She's also sort of like probed him with her power. Like, because that's sort of... They don't really get into her sort of empathetic, her empath powers as of yet, but I take it as... She sort of has this threshold where she can feel everybody's if she doesn't shut it out.
Yeah.
But then she could also focus on one person and sort of like focus on them and probe one specific person for pain. But she says that he's intrigued her because he's always in pain. Like, it's constant. And she says it's like this deep-seated agony that's like really icy and cold. But he always keeps it in check. Like, it never radiates off of him in a way that she's bombarded by it. Like, she always has to probe him in order to feel it, but it's always there. So, like, she's like, that's really interesting because most people can't keep it in check. And it's just when they're in pain, it just flows off of them. But his does not. So he sort of starts talking to her, and he sort of thinks that she's this girl called Britta, who is a girl at the castle, and that's actually who she stole her cloak and mask from. I say stole, borrowed.
Yeah.
So obviously Britta and Hawke have met, and I say met in the loosest of terms, have met before.
Yeah.
But she doesn't speak to him. Like, he's trying to ask her questions. Like, what are you doing here? Like, I didn't realize you'd be here tonight. Because she doesn't want him to know that she's not Britta.
Yeah.
So he just goes right for it and takes his shirt off. He's like, what? Shirt off? Okay.
I'm here for it.
Yeah. And she gets, like, turned on immediately. He walks towards her, and she thinks he's going to kiss her. And she's like, oh, I should probably not let him kiss me because I'm not allowed to kiss people because I'm the maiden. But, like, she doesn't stop him at all. Yeah. And instead, okay, I found this a very odd action. So he picks her up instead of, like, going over to her and kissing her. He picks her up.
She's too short.
Brings her. But, like, he does, like, he picks her up by her arms or, like, by her, like, he doesn't, like, swoop her into, like, a carry with, like, one arm behind and one arm under the knees. Yeah, he literally picks her up by, like, the waist, I guess. Yeah. And then brings her over to the bed and then lies down on top of her. Before he's even kissed her once.
I guess, like, that's what he and Britta do.
I guess, but wouldn't you want a little standing up foreplay? No. And I don't even mean foreplay like real foreplay. I mean just like make out or something.
Yeah.
Anyway. So he lays her down and then he kisses her. And then he stops and he asks her immediately, who are you? And she's like, how did you know? And his response is hilarious because he says, the last time I kissed Britta, she had her tongue, like, deep in my throat.
Yeah.
So apparently she was aggressive and Poppy is not. So he's like, I know you ain't her, so who are you? He also then pokes fun and is like, that was your first kiss. She was like, no, it isn't. And he's like, you're a liar. Yes, it is.
Yeah. Which is, like, wild.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, this is your first kiss? Now let's do more.
Yeah.
What is happening? Sir, chill the fuck out.
Yeah. Anyway, so she's like, well, maybe you should get off me. And he's like, well, tell me who you are. And she's like, well, no. Because she obviously can't tell him her name.
Oh, obviously.
Because then he'll know who she is. So instead he comes up with the nickname Princess because she's demanding that he get off of her and he's just saying no, which I feel like is a consent issue slightly.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
Anyway.
I'm here for it though. It's a hot scene.
Yeah,
I'm good.
It is.
But there's a bit of consent.
Yeah.
Wobble.
Yeah. So he sort of wants to know, like, why she didn't stop him from kissing her, considering she's not who he thought she was. It's like, why would you let a stranger kiss you?
Especially first kiss.
Yeah. Which is, a problem in and of itself. So they, all of a sudden, like, they start chatting a little bit, and, like, she asks him why he became a guard, and he's like, this is what you want to talk about? But he does answer, and he says, like, he wanted to improve his life. His dad was a farmer, and, like, he had really two options. Either be a farmer or become a guard. And they also start chatting about, like, death and how grief stays with you. I guess because he asked about her parents, and, she said that they were gone, and anyway. She's sort of thinking about, like, why did she go to the Red Pearl? Why is she in this room with this guy? Like, why did she let him kiss her? And it all comes down to choice for her because she doesn't get choice in her life. So, like, she just wants to have that moment of, this is my choice. She's also thinking about, like, well, what if they did, like, go further? And what if he did sort of take her virginity? And she thinks that if, as the maiden, she's found to be, like, unworthy, because, you know, virginity is tied up in worth. Eye roll. Anyway, she'll be exiled if she's found unworthy.
Yeah.
But, like, the idea she doesn't really hate that idea, I think. Because she says, like, then at least she'll be free and she'll be able to make choices.
Yeah.
And then she thinks about how, like, there's only one other person that has been found unworthy at their ascension. And that's all she knows about that person. She doesn't know. They've been stricken from all the history records and banished and forbidden from living amongst mortals. So, like, she knows nothing about this person, just knows that one person was found unworthy.
Yeah.
He asks her what she wants from him, and she says she doesn't really know. He wants to take her mask off, but she's like, no, thank you. He then says, like, I want to take it off when I kiss you here. And, like, starts kissing her, like, neckline. But, like, she's wearing a really high neck gown because, like, he's kissing on top of her dress.
Yeah.
And it's weird because, like, all I can think of is, wouldn't that then make her dress, like, weirdly damp and, like, yes. Uncomfortable?
Yes. Although, why, oh, God. Why is his lips don't have to be wet?
But, like, it seemed, just from the description, it almost seemed like he was, like, tonguing it through the fabric.
Yeah, it does. It does. It 100% does. Yes, you are correct.
So, like, he's, like, making out with her neckline through fabric, and he's like, ooh, I can't wait to, like, get this bare. And, like, I don't find this scene very hot, to be fair. They had one, like, they really only have that one kiss, and then he starts tonguing her dress, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, he gets to her nipple. But
I must have skimmed.
Oh yeah. He does tongue her nipple through her dress. And then it's damp.
Ugh. Gross.
Moist.
I hate that word so much.
I know. And you went to go see them with me, the band.
I know.
So funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Anyway, so he really, really wants to take her mask off. And, like, to be fair, she is thinking, like, if he did see my face, he wouldn't know I'm the maiden, because nobody has seen the maiden's face. So, like, no one knows what the maiden looks like. So, if he saw her face, he wouldn't immediately be like, I know who you are. However, there's something wrong with her face that we haven't really gotten a description of yet.
Yeah.
And she also talks about how she's got, like, scars on her body, and, like, if he did go further, like, if they did end up, like, getting naked, she's a bit self-conscious of what he would think of, like, the scars on her body.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh shit, why didn't I think of this earlier? Like, we've gotten far. So she's afraid of what he'll think if he does see her naked.
Yeah.
As he's feeling her up, he ends up finding the dagger that she has at her thigh. And he, like, takes it from her, and he's like, what are you doing with this? Like, you don't know how to use it. And she's like, dude, yes, I do.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, okay.
Oh, my God.
Because apparently women in Solace don't really know how to fight.
Yeah.
But I just love that he was like, you shouldn't have this if you don't know how to use it. And she's like, I do know how to use it. And he's like, oh, okay. Like,
fine. Go on with your life, man.
Right? So then he gets back on top of her because when he found the dagger, he sort of jumped up off her and was like, what is this? So then he gets back on top of her and he's about to kiss her again when there's like a knock at the door and it's one of his friends named Kieran. And he doesn't want to answer him. Like, Kieran's like yelling through the door like, hey dude, I need you. And he's like, I'm busy. He's like, I'm occupied right now. Come back later, please.
Yep.
But Kieran tells him that the envoy that they've been waiting for, the supplies that they've been waiting for, has shown up. So Hawke is like, oh, fine. So then he tells her, like, I have to go, but wait for me and I'll be back. So she's like, yeah, he really wants her to stick around. And she says, okay, I'll wait. But then as soon as he's gone, she like yeets it at him.
Yeah, which I love that. 'Cause I'm like, that's what you do.
Yeah, of course. If someone asks you to stay, you don't actually... Can you imagine her just like sitting in that room waiting for him? Like, desperate.
Yeah. How long is he going to be? Like,
yeah.
So silly.
Yeah. So I'm happy that she left.
Yeah.
So... Next morning, she's talking to her lady-in-waiting, is what I'm going to call her, Tawny. So Tawny is a second daughter that has been given to the court at 13. And because they were similar in age, she was assigned to Poppy. They were friends. Like, she's pretty much the only person that Poppy can talk to freely. And, like... one of the only people that's allowed to see her without her veil on. So they are friends, but Poppy sort of knows, like, it's mostly, like, for Tawny, it's mostly out of duty. Like, yeah, they're friends, but, like, if she had not been assigned to her, they never would have talked.
Yeah.
So, like, there's a certain level of trust. Like, she knows that, really, she works for the Duke and Duchess. So, like, she's sort of careful about... She needs to be careful about what she tells her, essentially. So, Tawny asks Poppy where she went last night, because she checked on her around midnight, and Poppy wasn't there.
Ooh.
Yeah. So, she does eventually tell her, I went to the Red Pearl. And Tawny is mad that she didn't get to go. She's like,
Fair.
oh my God, we have to go again. Like, you need to bring me this time because I want to go. And she's like, tell me everything. So she tells her most of the things that happen there, but she does not tell her about Hawke. Because, again, there's a level of trust. And, like, she knows that the Maiden issue, like, some lines can't be crossed. Mm-hmm. And that's
like
when
she has to be a maiden.
So, like, she can't really tell Tawny that she almost had sex and destroyed her virtue. And she also said that, like, she wants to keep that memory, like, just for her. Like, that's something that only she has.
Yeah.
She also mentions that she thought about him all night and awoke to a mysterious coil low in her belly. Meanwhile, she's just horny.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's fun. I do like I do like how she just says that instead of I'm horny.
Yeah. But is it that she doesn't know, or is it that
yes.
she doesn't say sex or horny or things like that? Like,
no,
she
it's
she like skirts around it. Yeah. So I was like, are we trying to say she doesn't realize she's horny, or like, not we, is the book trying to say she doesn't realize she's horny, or is she just like, I can't say that.
I do think that's what it is. Like, I do think she doesn't realize that she's just horny and turned on.
Yeah.
But I don't know. So they talk a little bit about, like, this mist. Apparently it's been seen in the Blood Forest. Like, who names a forest the Blood Forest? That's a terrible name.
I think the trees are red, though, so I get it. Is that what it is or something?
I don't know.
But you think you could just call it the Red Tree Forest.
Yeah. Like, there are also other things that are red that's not blood.
What? No.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Anyway, so apparently that's not actually that far away from them. So, like, Poppy's a little bit nervous about this because it hasn't been seen in the capital in decades. And apparently it's deadly. That's all we know so far. They also sort of speak about the ascension a little bit. So I guess Tawny notices that Poppy treats her ascension like she's going to her death and that, like, it's the end of her life. But Tawny thinks, like, it's really going to be the opposite. Like, it's when your life begins. Mm-hmm. And that it's going to be amazing and that, like, they'll, you know, get to live for thousands of years and they'll get to finally, you know, cause mischief and, like, do things together.
Yeah. Which you'd think that Poppy would kind of feel like that because she's very sheltered right now. But she's more, I can't think of the word.
Yeah, I feel like she's more hesitant about it because she doesn't understand it and she's not being given the choice. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yes.
Like, all the other people that get to ascend, it is an honor to be given that gift.
Yeah.
For her, it's sort of been told to her throughout her whole life, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah. It makes sense.
It's like a responsibility. Anyway, so Poppy does sort of think that, like, her life is going to be over because she's being given to the gods, is what everyone says. And she said that no one can tell her what that means. Mm-hmm. And there's no histories explaining it. So like we said before, the ceremony is very secretive. So she's obviously nervous because she doesn't know what this is going to do. But because Tawny is her lady in waiting, Tawny will also get to ascend. And Tawny is excited about it. So Poppy sort of feels bad because Tawny usually ends up going along with whatever mischief Poppy wants to. Mm-hmm. And she's worried that Tawny will be found unworthy by the gods because she's doing all these shenanigans that Poppy is doing.
Yeah.
So she feels guilty. So she says she's not going to risk Tawny's ascension anymore. So anytime she has, like, a shenanigan or an escapade or anything, she's not going to involve Tawny anymore. So, like, Tawny's like, let's go to the Red Pearl. And Poppy's like, no, I'm not going to take her there. I don't want to risk her ascension. So it just seems very cultish, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's very cultish.
Makes sense. But yeah, there's a lot of, like, not being found worthy and, like,
yeah,
you'll get in trouble if you do things. But it's like, feels like it should be, like, between you and the gods, not between, like nobody else should be able to say anything about what you do. It should be like a between you and the gods thing.
Yeah. Anyway, so later she's in her room after supper and Victor comes in and tells her she's been summoned. And she's sort of, like, immediately nervous because there's only two reasons she would be summoned. One would be the Duke wanting to see her. He calls her, like, ugly and a tragedy a lot. So, like, and, like, we already know that he punishes her. So, not a great guy. I can see why she wouldn't want to have a meeting with him. Mm-hmm. The second reason would be of accursed. And we don't really know what that means yet. And that's what it turns out to be. It's accursed. So Victor and Poppy leave the castle through, like, the servants' corridors. And they go through the city to the lower ward of Macedonia. In other words, like, I guess it's like the poor part of town.
Yeah.
So there's a white handkerchief on the doorknob of this, like, I'm calling it a house. I don't know how house-like it is.
Yeah.
And Poppy explains in her head that white handkerchief on the door is a symbol. And some people believe that death deserves dignity, but it's also evidence of high treason. So, like, we'll get into what it means. So Victor and Poppy have sort of been working together for 3 years now because of her unique ability. This empath thing. So he didn't want her involved in what he does because it is high treason. But she sort of insisted. So they go inside the house and they speak to this woman named Agnes. And she's in her mid to late 20s, and apparently she's in, like, huge amounts of emotional pain. And, like, Poppy says, like, it's staggering. It's so, like, it takes her aback. It's so painful.
Yeah.
She says that, like, the house is like, full of candles because there's no electricity because it's the lower ward, and, like, poor people don't get electricity in this kingdom. Again.
Sad.
Sounds very fair and just.
Yes.
So it's her husband, Marlowe, that is ill. He's a huntsman from the Rise, and apparently he's been gone for months, but he just returned. And she sort of thought he had a flu or a cold, but then he started to show signs of the curse. And Poppy sort of asks, like, the one thing she says is, have you said your goodbyes? And apparently that's the sound of that voice Agnes recognizes and knows that she's the Maiden. Which I don't understand, because if she's never allowed out, how do they recognize her voice?
I don't know. Can't answer that. Sorry.
Great. So anyway, Agnes sort of says, like, oh, you're the Maiden, I know exactly who you are, and you're a child of the gods, and you have a gift, and is very, like, reverent in front of Poppy. So Poppy sort of takes off one of her gloves and touches Agnes's hand, and then thinks of, like, a day at the beach that she had with her parents. And she says it's the last she thinks that it's the last happy memory she has of them. And she says that immediately the room feels lighter, and that, like, Agnes isn't as, like, the pain isn't radiating off of her as much. And, like, she's taken, like, it has eased some of Agnes's pain. But she also explains in her head that the effect isn't permanent and that Agnes will still feel the grief again. But she says hopefully it'll be more manageable and that she'll be able to survive it. So, like, it makes me wonder how long this eased grief would last. Like, are we talking a few days? Are we talking a week? Like,
I was thinking much less, like,
were
an
you?
hour. Yeah.
But, like, but she says that, like, she says that hopefully when she feels the pain again, it'll be more manageable.
Yeah.
So, like, in my head, that's, like, it's at least a few days to process things.
Yeah.
I don't
really
know.
know.
Anyway, so they're about to go to the husband in the other room, but Poppy senses that there's a child. So I guess they have to, like, inspect and make sure that, like, everything is good. So she lets Victor stay and try and find the kid because Agnes, they were like, is there anyone else in the home? And Agnes said no. So that was a lie. So we got to figure out why she's lying about the kid. And then Poppy goes in to deal with the husband. So she goes to the bed and examines him and finds his injury. He'd been bitten in the hip. And she said she could see that he was changing. Like, his nails were getting sharp, and his his canines and, like, 2 of the bottom teeth, they were all becoming, like, sharp. And she said he was becoming a craven. Whenever I think of that word, I think of that movie Underworld.
Yeah.
Remember the character Craven that wanted Celine and wanted to be with her forever?
Yeah.
And he was an asshole?
Yes.
That's what I think of when I think of Craven. So
yeah,
I think
same.
they all just look like him.
That's fair.
But a craven is a creature driven by insatiable hunger for blood and will kill anyone in their path. And if you didn't die from it, like if they didn't drain you dry, then you turn into one. And then she lets slip unless you're her.
Ooh.
So
what does that mean?
She lets that slip in there. So she also says that these cravens are creatures that were created by the Atlanteans, she calls it their poisoned kiss. And that turns innocent people into cravens. But she said, as a kingdom, they have hunted the Atlanteans for hundreds of years, almost to extinction, but one Atlantean is enough to create dozens of cravens. Obviously, all they got to do is bite someone.
Yeah.
And she says that they're not completely mindless beasts. They can be controlled, but only by the Dark One, Prince Castile.
Interesting.
Yes. So she gives the husband the same beachy memory that she gave the wife, along with some other ones, until he's able to speak. Like, I guess he was in so much pain and so, like, going through the change that he couldn't speak. She takes her veil off and, like, shows him her face and tells him who she is. And he knows she's here to give him dignity. She mentions again in her head that the reason they do this secretly is because if someone finds a cursed in town, they're brought into the square and burned alive in front of everybody. So, like,
why? Just why?
Yeah. So it's sort of like it's a way to do it quietly and quickly, and so that your loved ones don't have to see you killed in front of everybody.
Yeah.
So that's why it's sort of high treason. So you can put the white handkerchief on your doorknob, and then somebody will come and help you kill your loved one quickly and quietly, instead of like everybody finding out and then you know, having to witness this public execution.
Yeah.
He then tells her that, like, he had just wanted to say goodbye to his wife. Like, he knew he was infected, but he just wanted to say goodbye. And he said that he was prepared to do it, aka kill himself, but then he just couldn't. And I'm sort of like, dude, really?
Obviously you wouldn't be able to. Like, I don't know.
And I just feel like you have a wife. You also have a child. Like,
not very smart.
No, it's dumb. Anyway, there's apparently only 2 ways to kill a craven: a bloodstone blade or a stake made from the trees in the blood forest. And you have to get them either in the heart or the brain. So cutting off the head works, I think.
Makes sense.
He also admits that another guy, Ridley, came back with him, who was also bitten because he wanted to say goodbye to his dad. But he's not sure if he managed to kill himself or not. Anyway, so she tells him, thank you, like, thanks for letting me know. And then, this is what I don't understand. So it says she stabs him at the soft base of his skull. How does she get back there if he's lying down?
Yeah, I didn't really understand, but, like, I kind of envisioned her, like, almost, like, hugging him up and then...
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
See, I was thinking she went front ways.
Oh.
I don't know. Because if he's lying down on the bed, how is she going to get at the back of his head?
Yeah. She just rolled him over and stabbed him in the neck.
Yeah, I guess. Anyway. So she stabs him at the base of his skull, which severs his brainstem, which kills him instantly. But now she's like, oh shit, like if he was about to change and I killed him in time, this other guy, Ridley, he might be about to change. And I guess the husband also revealed that where his dad lived, like where Ridley's dad lived, but also revealed that Ridley himself doesn't live with his dad. He lives in the barracks with all the other soldiers. So she's like stressed out that he could be in the soldiers' barracks, and like if he turns and he starts attacking, then they could have to deal with like a ton of
all of the guards being
all
turned
the guards
into cravens. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. So she's like, shit, could be a bloodbath.
Yeah. So she obviously leaves the room, and then she goes out to see Victor, and he's figured out that the daughter is staying with a family friend, which is good, because otherwise, if the daughter was there, like, Poppy was afraid that the daughter had been bitten and the mother was trying to hide her.
Yeah.
But that's not the case. She's with family friend. So
thank God.
I know, that would have been so sad. Like, yeah. Fuck. So they both leave immediately to go to Ridley's father's house, just to check on the situation. But when they get there, his father has already killed him, which is also sad. So then Poppy and Victor kind of like just walk back to the castle, I guess. But they walk through the grove, which is a wooded area that Poppy kind of says divides the rich and the poor. And it's like a convenient place for them to sneak back into the castle, because a lot of people won't go there because it's haunted. So like no one's gonna see them walking through it because nobody's around.
Seems like there's a lot of convenient pathways. Like she gets out a lot.
Yes, she does. Yeah, like there's the like stairs at the back of her room. She can just leave her room without her guards knowing. I'm like, that seems like an issue.
Yeah. But I also feel like if one of her guards helps her escape, like...
Oh, yeah. But, like, obviously when she went to the Red Pearl, like, her guards were probably just standing outside the front of her room, just thinking she was in there.
Yeah.
But anyway, Poppy and Victor have a conversation, and... Victor is worried about people knowing about her powers, because like she took away some of the woman's grief, and like she's not supposed to be using her power. So Victor kind of wants her to stop. He's worried that there's going to be consequences with the Duke. Yeah. And he even says that like he's had to help her back to her rooms after the Duke's punishments. So like clearly something bad is happening in those, and she feels shame about that, which is like
why
sad. Yeah, like I get why she does, but it's very sad, and she shouldn't, but like I get it.
Yeah.
Victor also like asks her if she's looking to be caught so that the gods find her unworthy, and it kind of hits a bit too close to home, and Poppy doesn't want to think about it because she's kind of worried that might be the case, that she does want to be found unworthy, which makes sense. At least it's a choice. But she doesn't want to think about it too much, because then she's basically going to be screwed.
Yeah. Well, she'll be cast out, right? And, like, apparently when you're exiled, you're not even allowed to, like, live in one of the human villages. So, like, she's really has nowhere to go.
Yeah. She would, if she is found unworthy, she'll just die in the wilderness or be attacked by a craven and turned. So like, well, except for she said she couldn't be turned, so like she'd just die in the wilderness, I guess. Wouldn't be good. Victor says he wouldn't have taught her to fight if he knew it would lead to this, but she says she can't stop doing this. She's helping people because it's the right thing to do. Like, they shouldn't suffer and be shamed the way they are when they're killed by, I guess, the guards or the Duke's people or whatever. So, like, she feels strongly that this is the right thing to do. Which, like, makes sense. We get that.
Good for her.
Yeah.
But, like, this is sort of part of what we mean is, like, she's very assertive and like she doesn't follow the rules, even though she knows if she's caught she'll be punished, and she's punished on a regular basis. So like she still does what she can, even knowing something bad could happen to her, and yet she still has this naivete or whatever you want to say, when it comes to being at the Red Pearl. Yeah, she's got a lot on the go. So I guess later that night, Rylan escorts her, or starts to escort her, to the Queen's Garden, where she normally goes for a walk. But like he comes to her door, and she almost leaves without her veil, which is illegal. And then she puts her veil on, and then he's like, "Are you gonna put some shoes on?" Like she's clearly very like caught up in thinking about her conversation with Victor, and she's not really paying attention to shit that she probably should be. Which is just kind of funny. Rylan seems kind of nice. Like he's seems like a good guy. He calls her Pen, and he jokes around with her, but is obviously still like very protective. He's her guard. But on their way, Lord Brandel Mazine, who you talked about earlier, stops her to chat, even though she's not allowed to chat with people or linger anywhere. So it's like she's gonna get in trouble solely for this, but if she says no, he's gonna tell the Duke that she was like mean to him, and then she's gonna get trouble too. So like there's no winning in this situation. And she knows that like if Rylan does anything, then like the Duke could have him fired and cast out, because like obviously this lord has a lot of power. So Lord Mazine apparently dislikes her because Ian once bested him at cards, and he accused Ian of cheating, and Poppy laughed at how bad he was at cards, basically. So like he dislikes her because she embarrassed him, I guess. Fragile masculinity at its finest. 100%. It's, ugh, God. She kind of thinks of, like, his skin is apparently very pale, and his lips are dark, and his eyes are fathomless and empty, and they're dark and black like all the Ascended. And he's hundreds of years old, and he moves much faster than humans. And, like, those are characteristics of all Ascended, it seems like. And then she also says, like, he assists the Duke with Poppy's lessons, which you kind of mentioned before. And, like, any of the new hires in the castle, the servants and stuff, are warned to, like, keep away from him and try not to let him, like, see you, basically, because he harasses them worse than he harasses Poppy. So, like, he seems like a real piece of shit. So she goes to talk to him because she doesn't want to get in trouble. And he's super creepy. Like, they go to a shadowy alcove, and he, like, grabs her chin, and she can smell flowers on his hand, which is just like a breadcrumb that I'm just gonna leave there. But he grabs her. He grabs her by the waist after. Like, she tries to leave, I think, and he grabs her by the waist and hauls her back into him with a hand between her breasts. And, like, she feels him hard behind her. So, like, he's disgusting. So, like, do you think that he, like, wants her that way, or is he just getting off on the power?
There's definitely a power part to it, but, like, I think he probably, like, I don't think he would have raped her in this alcove, because, like, he'd get in more trouble for that than she would get in trouble for anything. I would think, because, like, she's the maiden, she's supposed to be a virgin, like, that's a big deal.
Right.
But I don't know. He's so creepy. I hate him so much. He then asks her about, like, the most recent lesson that she had with the Duke that he was there for, and he says she didn't make a sound even though he knows it had to hurt, which is like, he's a gross man. I very much do not like him. she kind of like snaps at him and like says something back to him, and kind of feels like this is what he was waiting for. He just wants a reason to like get mad at her, or like get the Duke mad at her type of thing.
Yeah.
But
he wants another lesson.
Yeah, exactly. She thinks back to the last time that like she snapped and lost her temper with the Duke. He apparently hit her so hard that he knocked her out, and she likely had like a concussion afterwards. So it's clearly very violent, the Duke towards her, which, you know, not great. She feels something wet on her jaw, which I'm assuming is his mouth.
Blech.
I didn't really understand. I was like, what is happening? But before he can do anything else, they hear a scream, which is good timing because she thinks that she was like seconds away from taking her dagger out and cutting off his dick. So
yeah,
that would have been
what
good.
he deserves,
right? So Poppy goes towards the scream, and it's another room, and there's a body in there, and it's a girl around her age, and she has deep puncture wounds in her neck. Her neck is like twisted, so broken, and her skirt is like hiked up around her middle. Ew. So she was likely having sex with somebody and then was murdered with 2 puncture wounds and then a twisted neck. So not ideal, I wouldn't say. So obviously after that, the whole castle goes on lockdown because they're like trying to figure out who did it and trying to like catch them. And they're also wondering if there's anybody else that was murdered other than this one girl. So Tawny and Rylan and Poppy are in her room, and they're just kind of talking about it. And Tawny thinks like it must have been a Craven attack. But Rylan and Poppy saw that like she was drained of blood, yes, but there were only 2 puncture wounds instead of like Craven have 4 canines. So it would have been 4 puncture wounds if a Craven had have attacked.
Yeah.
And she also says like Cravens aren't creatures that are interested in sex. So it would be weird for a Craven. Like, it seems like they're kind of mindless. They're just like blood. That's all they care about. Like, yeah. So it would be weird for a Craven to have sex with her and then kill her.
Yeah.
She then kind of wonders if like an ascended, like Lord Mazine, could be capable of this. But she also is like, why would he or someone like that do something like this? And how would they drain the blood without making a mess? Because like ascended don't have teeth and don't suck blood. So how would they be able to, like, how would anybody else be able to get the blood out unless they had 2 fangs and sucked her blood?
Right.
Victor shows up to her room and he says the castle is cleared and that the Duke thinks that it was a dissenter that did this. Which sounds weird to Poppy too, because she's like, how does that make any sense? How would a dissenter get all the blood out without making a mess? And they don't have fangs, they're just regular people. So Victor then asks her about Lord Mazine's, like, what happened with him. Yeah. And she feels embarrassed and says, like, he didn't do anything, like, it's all fine, whatever. But she doesn't tell Victor how bad the Lord is, because she's embarrassed, but also because she's like, Victor can't do anything about it anyway, so there's no point in telling him. He'll just be upset, and then, like, he can't do anything, I can't do anything, so I'll just keep it to myself type of thing. But,
like, it's sort of true. Like the Duke is his boss, and the Lord Mazine is sort of the Duke's right-hand man, so, like, there's literally nothing Victor can do about it.
Yeah, which is so sad, but, like, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then Victor tells her that the girl was likely with someone before she died, and there was no evidence of a struggle. So, like, she was likely consensually having sex with somebody before she was killed.
Right.
Which is good. Obviously, you still don't want to be dead, but I guess it would be worse if you were raped and then murdered. So, you know. We also get a little tidbit that the only species, I'm going to say, that has 2 canines and drinks blood are the Atlanteans, which, like, dissenters are bad, but Atlanteans are even worse. Like, they come from this forgotten kingdom, and, like, they're the ones that created the Craven. So, like, it's real bad if there's actually an Atlantean in the castle. And Poppy finds it even more terrifying than the thought that there could be a dissenter in the castle. In the morning, Poppy sneaks out to investigate because apparently the Ascended don't go out in the daylight, and it's like to honor the gods, because apparently the gods only were out at nighttime. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me, but anyway, the Ascended, they don't go in the sun. They're only up at nighttime. So she goes to the place where she normally meets the priestess for her weekly lessons, because that's where this book is. The book's called The History of the War of Two Kings and the Kingdom of Solace. So she opens that up to read about the Atlanteans. So I'm kind of inferring, like, we don't really get a lot of it, but, like, the War of Two Kings, I guess, was the war between the Atlanteans and Poppy's side, the Ascended side, whatever you call them. So they went to war, the Atlanteans lost, and now they're living as the rulers in this land, I guess. Kind of what it seems like. But anyway, so she opens the book to read about Atlanteans, and it just confirms her suspicions. Apparently, Atlanteans look like mortals, but when they get of age, they get fangs and strength, and they can heal from most wounds. And they apparently used to bond with the Wolven before they went extinct. The Wolven went extinct.
So, looks like we have a good old vampires and werewolves story.
Yeah, except for they're not enemies, which is interesting. Because they, like, actually bond with each other and then, like, protect each other type of thing, it seems like.
Which I like.
Me too. It's nice. A bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So apparently Atlanteans, like, their aging slows when they get their fangs, and they start to thirst for mortal blood. But, like, 1 mortal year is, like, no. It takes 3 decades for them to age physically 1 mortal year. So, like, they're very slowed down aging-wise. But it is a very big difference from the Ascended, because Ascendeds just stop aging at whatever age they ascend. Like, they never change, I guess, until they die. Whereas Atlanteans do age and can get older. It just takes longer.
Right.
And then we get that, like, the Craven were made by Atlanteans biting mortals. And, like, Atlanteans need mortal blood to live. So she kind of wonders, like, if it was an Atlantean that killed this girl, why did they then snap her neck? Because, like, it would have been she would have become a Craven, and she would have just gone around and fucked the castle up. So, like, if it is an Atlantean or if it is a dissenter, you'd think that they'd want
to sow chaos.
Exactly, yeah. So she doesn't really understand, which makes sense. Poppy's ascension, like you said, is set for her 19th birthday, which is the exact time when Atlanteans get their fangs, which I just thought was an interesting coincidence. She also says that, like, the gods that they pray to now are the same gods that the Atlanteans had, but the gods no longer support the Atlanteans. It's an interesting relationship they have with the gods, because it seems like people can actually talk to them, or are they just praying to them? Like, I don't really understand.
Yeah, I feel like this is why I said it's, like, cultish, because it seems like it seems like I feel like the Duke and Duchess are, like, the mouthpieces for the gods, and they've got the channel to be able to ask for things from the gods, but like everybody else just prays to them. And I don't know, it's very like, oh, the gods this, it's what the gods want, it's what the gods don't want. Like everything is very, it has to please the gods.
Yeah. So it kind of makes me wonder, like, are they just saying that they actually talk to the gods, or just do people actually talk to the gods? Like, I don't know if we get that in this book or not.
I mean, just coming, like, they're not talking to the gods. Like, come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
like, the people think that they are.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's just a lot of things that I'm like, how would anybody know that?
Yeah.
But it's like victors make up their own books, and like that's kind of what this book is, it seems like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rulers write the history, or whatever the saying is.
Is it winners?
Yes. Not rulers. Thanks. Yeah. The winners write the history books. You got it. So then Poppy goes to the room where she saw the girl dead. And the CD is gone. There's only like an accent chair and a table with a floral arrangement on it, but nothing really seems out of place. She leans down though, and she finds a petal that smells like jasmine, but it makes her stomach roll, which she doesn't really understand because like normally she likes jasmine. So it's just a weird tidbit of information that we can just keep in our brains. Mm-hmm. But she's like, she doesn't really figure anything out from going into this room. She's like, yeah, it was probably an Atlantean. That's it. Later, Rylan asks if she wants to go to the garden. So it's like that night. But she's a bit wary because like a girl died and it was likely an Atlantean. And she's like, should I really be like walking around outside type thing? But he says, but he tells her what happened to the poor girl and with the Lord, like Lord Mazine, has nothing to do with what she finds joy in, which I just thought was like, he seems like a real nice guy.
He does. It's really unfortunate.
It is really unfortunate.
And like he genuinely seems to care for her. Like not in a creepy way or like a romantic way, just in a like she is his charge sort of a way.
Yeah, it's almost like seems brotherly.
Yeah.
So they go to the garden and they are not interrupted this time, which is good. And she says that she feels better as soon as she's in the garden. And like they walk over to where the wall is crumbling, like where her and Victor sometimes sneak in and out of. And the wall there is basically covered in vines, and like as the sun sets, night blooming roses open, and it sounds really pretty.
Yeah. Like, I didn't realize there was such thing as night blooming roses.
I don't know if there are.
Oh, okay.
In this world there are. I don't know if there are in real world.
Life.
I don't know anything.
Yeah, I'm not a horticulturist.
No, not at all. Rylan calls them beautiful and says that they remind him of ... So Poppy looks over and there's just an arrow like protruding out of his chest, and she's like, what the fuck? He tells her to run, obviously, because that's what she should do.
Yes.
And then he falls backwards and she opens up her senses to like feel his pain, but he is already dead.
Oh,
just so sad. It is very sad.
Like, so do you think he was about to call her beautiful?
Oh, I don't know.
He says the roses are beautiful. They remind me of you.
Maybe.
Like,
that's
maybe
a good question.
Maybe it was romantic for him.
Maybe he was in love with her.
Oh my god.
Oh, that's sweet. I honestly, I was like, and we never find out what he was gonna say. I was like, reminds him of home, or like reminds him of, I don't know, anything else. But yeah, no, that would be, aw. Now it's even sadder.
Yeah.
she hears footsteps and a new guy shows up and he's got like a bow by his side. So he clearly is the one that killed Rylan.
Yep.
And he tells her she's going to do as he says or he'll hurt. He's not afraid to hurt her if she doesn't.
Yikes.
Do what he wants, basically. And she just starts feeling rage, which is like, I guess, a character trait of hers, I'm gonna say. But like, she is just angry. She's like, this person killed Rylan. Mm-hmm. I'm not standing for it. So
she mad, bro.
Mm-hmm. So she grabs her dagger, but she knows like this person could be an Atlantean because like obviously that's what killed the girl. So she's like, she needs to be quick because Atlanteans are faster than humans. So of course he's like, okay, we're leaving. You got to be quiet. Follow me. Blah, blah, blah. But she does put up a fight and she goes to stab him in the back, but he moves just in time to miss his heart. And she says he makes an inhuman sound, which I don't know what that sound is, but interesting. And then he punches her in the face. And she stabs him again and he punches her again and his hood falls down so she can see that he looks like he's her age. And he calls her a bitch.
Yikes.
And yeah, it gets very intense. But she threatens that she's not going to miss his heart a third time. But he says he'll enjoy tearing her skin off her weak, fragile bones. And it doesn't matter what he, quotation marks, capital H, has planned for her. This guy is going to bathe in her blood and feast on her entrails.
Yikes.
Like, that doesn't he doesn't seem like he's human. I'm gonna say that away.
But like, at the same time, so like, obviously at first he's like, you're gonna come with me. So like, obviously there's an attempt at a kidnapping here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But now all of a sudden, because she stabbed him twice, not in the heart, and doesn't kill him, now he's gonna like tear her skin off and like bathe in her blood. Like,
yeah.
That is, like, what does he expect? Like, obviously, if someone tries to kidnap you, you're going to try and defend yourself. So, like, I feel like he's getting really offended for no reason. Not for no reason, because he has been stabbed. But, like, I just, like, what do you want from her? Like, you want her to just be like, okay.
He does. That's what he wants. That's what he expects. But, like, clearly he's also been sent to kidnap her by someone who is also a man.
Yes.
So that's interesting. But he also was just going to completely go against what this guy wants and just kill her. Which is like, he's not a very good soldier. I'm going to say that. Then they both hear like 2 whistles come from the woods. And he promises that he'll make her pay for her smart mouth. But he runs away. So I guess that was a sign to him. Someone was like, get the fuck out.
Yeah.
She's standing there after being punched in the face twice and stabbing a man, and she's like, she pushes down her panic until she feels numb. So clearly she was either going to have a panic attack or just turn it all off. So she's pushed it all down and she's like, I'm good to go. But she starts walking towards the castle and guards find her covered in Rylan's blood and I guess the other guy's blood too, but they probably think it's Rylan's.
Yeah.
And Victor shows up too, which is like, I think she needs him in this moment. So it's good. In the next scene, Duchess Tierman is with Poppy and she's like fretting over the attempted kidnapping, which makes sense. Like, it's not a great time.
No. Especially since she's her favorite.
Yes. She's the maiden. Victor says it's likely that the person came through the section of the wall that's crumbling, which is like obviously where Poppy always sneaks out. So it's not great. But Poppy luckily only has superficial wounds on her face. Like, she's not actually hurt too badly.
Right.
But the Duchess does mention that Rylan must have been unprepared for an attack and like he wasn't paying enough attention, and Victor agrees, and Poppy is kind of shocked by that because she's like, Rylan is such a good guard, like she's upset that they're saying that he wasn't.
Yeah. Well, and like what good is saying like, oh, he was unprepared, like he's dead.
Yeah,
like exactly. That's not gonna, like, it's like speaking ill of the dead sort of a thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's not great.
And like he still wasn't at fault, even if he wasn't 100% like even if he wasn't 100% prepared, he's still like, you still can't blame him for his own death. Like it still wasn't his fault.
No, and like the person was clearly hiding somewhere. It's not like they came out and were like, I have a bow. Like, I don't know if anybody would have seen it. Like,
yeah.
If Victor was with her, would he really have seen this person hiding in the bushes? Probably not.
Right.
But we don't really know. Poppy does ask the Duchess not to tell her brother because she doesn't want him to worry. But the Duchess says, like, she needs to tell the Queen because obviously it was an attempted kidnapping. The Queen needs to know.
Yeah.
And the Queen could end up telling her brother. The Duchess then says, like, Poppy is super important. Her ascension is tied to hundreds of ladies and lords in wait across the kingdom. Like, the ascension is going to be massive. And I'm like, is it going to be, like, the biggest one ever? Does everybody, like, it's interesting.
Yeah.
The arrow that had killed Rylan had the Dark One's promise on it, I guess, carved into it. But it's from blood and ash, we shall rise. And it's, I guess, the dissenters' motto, I'll say. So they know that this was a dissenter attack / attempted kidnapping.
Yikes.
Yeah. The Duchess also tells them that the girl that was killed was likely killed by an Atlantean, which is what they thought in the first place. And the Atlantean probably got into the castle with a group that was visiting the day that
it happened.
She was killed.
Right.
Yeah. And that this attack is likely the Dark One coming for Poppy. So, like, there's a lot happening here. The Duchess also says, like, the Queen may summon her to the capital now that, like, when she hears about the attack, because she might want her close to make sure that she's safe. Which I don't think Poppy wants to leave. But I guess afterwards, Poppy and Victor have a bit of a chat about it, and she says, like, the attacker couldn't have been the Dark One himself because he referenced somebody else who had plans for her.
Right.
So likely this person was working for the Dark One.
Right. She's very, like, good for her for sort of, like, putting the pieces together a little bit. I don't know. Yeah.
No, I think so too, because, like, we've had many books where people are like, we're yelling at them to put shit together.
Yeah.
Apparently she's lost 2 guards in a very short time frame. Like, she had a guard, Hannes, I think his name was, who I think had a heart attack or something.
Yeah, he was a young guy, and apparently he went to sleep and woke and just didn't wake up. They said he had like a condition of the heart.
Yeah. And then she had Rylan for a short period of time before he was killed. So, like, she's finding it hard to keep guards at the moment. Other than Victor, who I guess she's had since she's been there. She kind of has, like, a bit of a throwaway thought where she's like, whatever the healer put on her face is working fast, so it must be the same thing that she uses on her back for the welts. Which you can just assume are from the lessons from the Duke, but, like, it's not painting a great picture about what happens there.
No.
We've also heard that her face is... something's going on with her face.
Yes.
I think you said, but we didn't really get into it. But now she's looking in a mirror, so we get a bit more about it. So half of her face has scars on it, and it's just 2 scars. One is from her hairline to her, hairline down her face, I guess. Like, you can't see it when she has her veil on, so it doesn't hit her mouth, and it's only on one side of her face. So, and then the other one is, like, from her temple to her nose, and it, like, just misses her eye, basically. So she has 2 big scars, I guess. They're very noticeable. she thinks that her mother was apparently granted immunity from the ascension because she was favored by the queen, which is unheard of. Like, people don't get, like, if you're rich, if you're a lady, you ascend. Like, it's not usually allowed to not ascend.
Right. But so, like, what I don't understand is, like, it's saying she was granted immunity from the ascension, but why would she want, you know what I mean? Because they try and make it seem like the ascension is like, yes, everyone wants to do it.
Yes. So that makes you think, like, what does the mother know that we don't know? Mm-hmm. But also, if she was ascended, she wouldn't have been able to have kids, because ascended don't have children. So, like, Poppy and her brother just wouldn't exist.
Right.
So it's like, it's a weird thing. I don't really understand. But yeah, obviously maybe her mother just wanted to have kids, and she was like, I don't want to ascend, I want to get married and have children. Yeah. So maybe that was the reason. But I don't think we really get much about it. But apparently the queen has said, like, if she was ascended, she may have lived through the attack that killed her, which is, like, not helpful, ma'am.
Yeah.
Tawny knocks on her door, and they kind of, like, neither one of them could sleep, so they get into bed together and, like, just chat. And this is, like, the first time that Tawny has ever had to deal with death, because I guess they're still in their teens, really.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so Tawny's, like, having a hard time with it. But the scene's kind of sweet that they have, and, like, Poppy tries to make her feel better, and then, like, I do think they, like, have a genuine friendship. Like, I don't think that it's just because Tawny has to. Like, obviously, like, Tawny wouldn't have been her friend if she wasn't forced to be with her all the time. But I do think that they actually, like, have a genuine friendship together.
I feel like it's probably genuine on Tawny's side. Mm-hmm. But I feel like Poppy can't get past the fact that, like, she's, like, an employee.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, like, Poppy can't let down that last wall. But I feel like Tawny probably, like, apart from, like, having to help her dress and do all that, I feel like Tawny probably feels like it's genuine.
Yes. And I think it's the same thing. And, like, you can't really fault Poppy for it, because, like, she's not allowed to have friends, and, like, if anybody finds this shit out, she's gonna get in trouble with the Duke, and, like, I kind of get why she's wary of, like, actually calling somebody an actual friend, but, like, I'm glad that she has Tawny. It seems like they're good for each other. Poppy's worried that the queen might petition the gods to move up the ascension, which is just interesting. I'm like, can you do that? Can you petition the gods to move up the ascension? But I guess the queen can do whatever the fuck she wants.
Yeah. And I guess I wonder, like, what is why is the ascension happening when it is? Like, it says it's happening for her when she turns 19. Like, is that a requirement, or, like, could they do it when they wanted? Like, what is the requirement on time?
Yeah, I guess the big thing is, like, if you are ascending, you're going to be that age for the rest of your life.
Right. Oh, that's a good idea.
So, I guess that's why they want to wait until she's 19, so that she looks 19 and not 18. I don't know. There's not much of a difference, I wouldn't say.
Yeah.
But yeah. The next day, Poppy goes to Ryland's funeral, even though, like, it's unheard of anyone other than guards going to a guard's funeral. So, like, she's really not supposed to be there, and she could get in trouble for being there, so it's not great. But, like, he was her guard, so she wants to go. They oil and salt the bodies and burn them, and I kind of guess it's so that they can't become craven. Like, I wonder if a body was bitten by a craven, would it turn? Like,
if it was already dead?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't either. It's just interesting. When it's time to actually light the pyre, Victor is expected to do it because, like, he's the one that worked the closest with Ryland. But he doesn't want to leave Poppy on her own because he's her guard. And she kind of starts to think that, like, coming here might have been a bad idea because, like, Victor can't grieve the way he needs to because he has to watch her. And she kind of starts to feel a bit bad about being there. Mm-hmm. But someone walks up behind them and says that he has her. And of course, it's Hawke Flynn. Mm. So Victor kind of, like, studies him a bit and says, like, he's heard that Hawke is the best on the rise right now. He's very skilled with a sword and bow. And Hawke kind of says, like, he's good at what he does. Killing. And it's a cheesy line, but the best part of it is honestly that it immediately turns Poppy on. You're like, oh, girl, you're so fucked. But all she can think about now is how she's worried that, like, if she talks around Hawke, he might recognize her voice and know that she's the girl that he made out with at the Red Pearl. Yeah. Which is obviously a really bad thing if he does notice.
And valid.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. So she's like, I just won't talk. And she doesn't. It works. Hawke does tell her, though, that she does them all a great honor by being there. Because I guess, like, normally noble people don't go to guards' funerals. And he also notices, like, her injuries on her face, and he says that she can be assured that it'll never happen again. So she's never gonna get injured ever again because he's there, apparently. I'm like, what? How? Anyway, so we jump to a scene where Poppy and Victor are training, and she's actually, like, really good. Like, I think she beats him in one of their, like, tussles or whatever you call it, one of their things, which is good. Like, you obviously want her to be good at fighting. Mm-hmm. But she starts to think about a book that Tawny snuck her about star-crossed and fated lovers, which is just an interesting book to be reading, and maybe another crumb. Because she's actually not allowed to read this kind of books. She's not allowed to read anything that's not, like, specifically chosen for her to read, like history books and shit.
Ugh, can you imagine?
So I cannot. So she actually thinks about sneaking to the Athenaeum outside of the castle to get more books, but she's like, probably a bad time to do it where there's somebody on the loose trying to kidnap her.
Yeah. I mean,
right.
Great forethought on her part. Like, at least she's not one of those main characters that is constantly, like, putting themselves in harm's way. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so many of them are like, what? There's someone after me? I'm going to sneak out in the middle of the night. It'll be fine.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So, like, she's not doing that.
She has some self-preservation skills, I guess.
Yeah.
She asks Victor who he thinks her new guard's going to be. And he does bring up Hawke as a possibility because he's super skilled and he's close with the commander, but he is young. So, and Poppy's like, shit, I don't want him to be my guard because he's gonna figure out who I am, and obviously he'll tell the Duke and Duchess because, like, if he tells them, then he'll get a leg up in his career and he might be up for even more promotion. So, like, she's very worried. They also kind of talk about how hot Hawke is, which I just thought was cute.
Like, they talk about it, like, her and Victor?
Yeah, Victor's like, I know you've noticed him. All the ladies have noticed him. And she's like, no. And he's like, it's okay to look at him. He's a handsome man, but you just can't do anything else. You're like, eee. Victor also says that, like, Hawke isn't familiar with the city, which is, like, a good thing because he won't be as complacent as somebody who is used to this city. He'll be more aware of his surroundings, so it's a good thing in a guard. Then we jump to a new scene. The Duke and the Duchess and the Maiden are like up on a dais, and they're like granting an audience with the people. And she is just looking around, looking for Hawke basically the whole time, and she's like drawn to him, and they're like eyes lock. Their eyes lock a lot for somebody who has a veil on where you can't see her face. But
well, I guess he can imagine where her eyes are.
Yeah. It does give her goosebumps.
Of course,
just
does.
looking at each other.
Of course.
But then a couple comes up to present their child to the Duke and Duchess, and it's their third child, but their first and second children died of blood sickness. So they are asking that their third son not be considered for the right, since he's the only child they have left. And like we said before, you can keep your first child, you keep your second child until they're 13, and then they get given to the gods, and any children after that, they take them at like 1 month or something.
But like, what I don't understand is why would you then choose to have more kids?
I know, I don't.
If you get to, like, these people, I sort of understand, because like, they have no more kids, but like, I don't understand why you would continue having children if you know that they're going to get given to the temples, and you're never allowed to see them again. I
guess it's because like you want to have kids to please the gods. Like, if you believe in these gods and you want, like, the gods protect them from what's outside of the rise, basically, and they give them their children to serve them or whatever. So I guess if like you believe in these gods, then you want to have children to give to them.
I guess. I feel like
that's all I can really think of. So this couple is asking to keep their third child, but
yeah,
they're just like, the Duke and Duchess are just like, no, like it's your third child. They get taken at 1 month. That's the way it is. Like, we can't ask for the gods to change that. That's not. Yeah, it's not the way of the world.
Yeah, they're sort of asking for an exception, and they're like, we can't get an exception. And it's funny because Poppy's like, well, that doesn't seem right because they made an exception with my brother. Like, my brother was not supposed to be an ascended, but they made an exception for him. And like, she says like exceptions can be made, but like for some reason, they're not.
Yeah, and like they just don't care. And Poppy even kind of thinks like the ascended aren't mortal anymore, so they don't feel feelings like normal humans. Like their emotions are different, and like I think she even says like she doesn't feel pain or anything off of them.
No,
but like they're very unempathetic, apathetic. Like they're not human anymore. So like they're not going to sit here and be like, oh, of course we'll ask because you lost your children. The complete opposite, actually.
Yeah.
Poppy accidentally opens up her senses and she feels the grief of the parents, and she's like overwhelmed by it. So she starts to build a wall in her head to like block out the feelings. And she says it works, but she does feel something like acid, and her gaze like snags on a blonde man in the crowd, and she can feel something hot, like physical pain off of him. But she's like, it's not physical pain. Like, he didn't just get hurt physically. So it's something else, and it's just kind of weird to her because it's not what she normally feels. And then the Duke and Duchess basically just say, no, man, we're not letting you keep your child. And they all have to go on about their day.
Yeah.
And that's our first week.
Yeah. I don't like this scenario.
No, me neither. And they also said that like the wife can't have any more children, but I'm like, why would she put her body through having more children just to get them taken away if what she wants is to keep one?
But I don't think any more will get taken away.
I thought they all did after the first one.
I don't think so.
I don't really know.
I don't know. This is one of the things that doesn't get explained, that we're not well enough. Yeah, that we're not really sure on. So like,
you'd think that have like a list of like, this is what happens to the children.
First
That's what
kid,
I want. Like, first child.
keep. Second kid, given to the courts. Third kid, given to the temples. Fourth kid, what happens?
Who knows? Yeah. I don't really get it, but maybe we'll get it eventually, and I just don't remember.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Could be.
Yeah. Anyway, that is our episode for the week. If you do want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in this episode or any of our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions, you can email us at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com, and be sure to check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at coffeeandcoread.
Yeah, so next week we're going to be reading chapters 10 to 21 of From Blood and Ash. So make sure you follow along, and if you're enjoying our little chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you find content. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you on the next page.